Good evening. I'm Adrien Sala, and you're listening to WikiSleep YouTube. If you're enjoying our channel but hate the ads, all of our episodes are available ad-free through our WikiSleep app, which you can find easily by clicking the links below or visiting wikisleep.com. The app has more unique sleep support, including meditations, breath work, ambient sounds, white noise, exclusive episodes, and so much more. It's available entirely ad-free, and you can download it for free by visiting wikisleep.com. There's a free trial to give it a test drive to see if it's the right fit for you, and then it's only an investment of $1.50 a week for better sleep. It's a quick, simple, and inexpensive way to invest in your sleep hygiene and sleep health. As we begin, I recommend taking a moment to get comfortable. Then take a few long, deep breaths and settle in for this calm, interesting, but quiet story. And one last note, no need to smash that like button. You can simply, gently, sleepily click it and subscribe. And don't forget while you're doing that to add notifications as well so you never miss an episode. Thank you, and I wish you a happy, restful sleep in whatever way works best for you. Good evening. I'm Adrien Sala, and tonight I'm going to read to you about Bernie Madoff, an American scoundrel, fraudster, and financier who ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history, worth an estimated $64.8 billion. The ruin of many people, with some losing fortunes that would have kept their families housed, fed, and free for generations. Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison, where he died alone during the pandemic. As we begin, I suggest taking a deep breath, settling in, and, if you're able, letting go of whatever is on your mind for the next 30 to 40 minutes. Bernard Madoff was born on April 29, 1938, in Queens, New York. He was the second of 3 children, with a sister named Sandra and a brother named Peter. Madoff graduated from Far Rockaway High School in 1956, then attended the University of Alabama for 1 year, before transferring to and graduating from Hofstra University in 1960 with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. While he was a student at Far Rockaway High School, Madoff met Ruth Alpern, and the pair started dating. Ruth graduated in 1958 and earned her bachelor's degree at Queens College, and on November 28, 1959, they married. They had two sons, Mark, born on March 11th, 1964, a graduate of the University of Michigan, who eventually hanged himself on the second anniversary of his father's arrest, and Andrew, born on April 8th, 1966, a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton Business School, who died of cancer in 2014. Over the years, both eventually borrowed money from their parents to purchase homes and other property. Mark owed his parents $22 million, and Andrew owed them $9.5 million, and both were the targets of a tax fraud investigation by federal prosecutors, according to the Wall Street Journal. Madoff briefly attended Brooklyn Law School, but left after his first year to found Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities. He became a penny stock broker and dealer with the equivalent of $44,000 that he earned from working as a lifeguard and as an irrigation sprinkler installer. He also took a loan of $50,000 from his father-in-law, Saul Alpern, who referred a circle of friends and their families to become his clients. Initially, the firm made markets via the National Quotation Bureau's pink sheets. In order to compete with firms that were members of the New York Stock Exchange trading on the stock exchange's floor, Madoff's firm began using innovative computer information technology to disseminate its quotes. After a trial run, the technology that the firm helped develop became the NASDAQ. After 41 years as a sole proprietorship, the Madoff firm incorporated in 2001 as a limited liability company with Madoff as the sole shareholder. The firm functioned as a third market trading partner, bypassing exchange specialist firms by directly executing orders over the counter from retail brokers. At one point, Madoff Securities was the largest market maker at the NASDAQ, and in 2008 was the sixth largest market maker in S&P 500 stocks. The firm also had an investment management and advisory division, which it did not publicize, that was the focus of the fraud investigation. Madoff was the first prominent practitioner of payment for order flow, in which a dealer pays a broker for the right to execute a customer's order. The practice has been called a legal kickback, and many have questioned the ethics of these payments. Madoff argued that these payments didn't alter the price that the customer received. He viewed them as normal business practice, saying, "If your girlfriend goes to buy stockings at a supermarket, the racks that display those stockings are usually paid for by the company that manufactured the stockings." Order flow was an issue that attracted a lot of attention, but was grossly overrated. Madoff lived in Roslyn, New York, in a ranch house through the 1970s. In 1980, he purchased an oceanfront residence in Montauk, New York. And by the time of his arrest, he also owned a home in France and an 8,000 square foot house in Palm Beach, Florida, where he was a member of the Palm Beach Country Club, where he searched for targets of his fraud. All three of his homes were eventually auctioned by the U.S. Marshals Service in September 2009. From 1991 to 2008, Bernie and Ruth Madoff contributed about $240,000 to federal candidates, parties, and committees, including $25,000 a year from 2005 through 2008 to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. Madoff served on the board of directors of the Securities Industry Association and was chairman of its trading committee. He was a founding board member of the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, subsidiary in London, and the International Securities Clearing Corporation. Madoff's name first came up in a fraud investigation in 1992, when two people complained to the SEC about investments they made with Avellino and Bynes, the successor to his father-in-law's accounting practice. For years, his father-in-law and two of his colleagues, Frank Avellino and Michael Bynes, raised money for Madoff, a practice that continued after Avellino and Bynes took over the firm. When the investigation started, Avellino quickly returned the money to investors and the SEC closed the case. In 2004, Genevieve Viette Walker Lightfoot, a lawyer in the SEC's Office of Compliance Inspections and Examinations, informed her supervisor branch chief that her review of Madoff found numerous inconsistencies and recommended further questioning. She was told to stop work on the Madoff investigation, send them her work results, and investigate the mutual fund industry instead. The mechanics of the Madoff Ponzi scheme were not complex, but largely fueled by his position as a member on many prominent securities boards. According to an SEC indictment, office workers created false trading reports based on the returns that Madoff ordered for each customer. For example, when Madoff determined a customer's return, one of the back office workers would enter a false trade report with the previous date and then enter a false closing trade in the amount required to produce the required profit. Prosecutors allege that his team used a computer program specifically designed to backdate trades and manipulate account statements. On a daily basis, his assistant Frank DePascali and his team on the 17th floor of the Lipstick Building, where the scam was based, watched the closing price of the S&P 100. They then picked the best performing stocks and used them to create bogus baskets of stocks as the basis for false trading records, which Madoff claimed were generated from his supposed split-strike conversion strategy in which he bought blue-chip stocks and took option contracts on them. They frequently made their trades at a stock's monthly high or low, resulting in the high returns that they touted to customers. But on occasion, they slipped up and dated trades as taking place on weekends and federal holidays, though this was never caught. Over the years, Madoff admonished his investors to keep quiet about their relationship with him. This was because he was well aware of the finite limits that existed for a legitimate split-strike conversion. As early as 2001, Harry Markopoulos discovered that in order for Madoff's strategy to be legitimate, he would have had to buy more options on the Chicago Board Options Exchange than actually existed. Additionally, at least one hedge fund manager, Suzanne Murphy, revealed that she balked at investing with Madoff because she did not believe there was enough volume to support his purported trading activity. Madoff admitted, during his March 2009 guilty plea, that the essence of his scheme was to deposit client money into a bank account, rather than invest it and generate steady returns as clients believed. He told the courts that when his clients wanted their money, he used the money in the Chase Manhattan bank account that belonged to them or other clients to pay the requested funds. Madoff maintained that he began his fraud in the early 1990s, though prosecutors believed it was underway as early as 1980s. In 1999, financial analyst Harry Markopoulos informed the SEC that he believed it was legally and mathematically impossible to achieve the gains Madoff claimed to deliver. According to Markopoulos, it took him 4 minutes to conclude that Madoff's numbers did not add up, and another minute to suspect they were fraudulent. After 4 hours of failed attempts to replicate Madoff's numbers, Markopoulos believed he had mathematically proven that Madoff was a fraud. Despite this, he was ignored by the SEC's Boston office in 2000 and 2001, and the New York office in 2005 and 2007 when he presented further evidence. He has since co-authored a book with Gayatri Dikatru, the leader of his legal team, titled "No One Would Listen." The book details the frustrating efforts he and his legal team made over a 10-year period to alert the government, the industry, and the press about Madoff's fraud. Although Madoff's wealth management business ultimately grew into a multi-billion-dollar operation, none of the major derivative firms traded with him because they did not believe his numbers were real. Also, none of the major Wall Street firms invested with him, and several high-ranking executives at those firms suspected his operations and claims weren't legitimate. Others contended that it was inconceivable that the growing volume of Madoff's accounts could be competently and legitimately serviced by his documented accounting auditing firm, a 3-person firm with only one active accountant. The FBI reported that during the first week of December 2008, Madoff confided to a senior employee, identified later by Bloomberg News as one of his sons, that he was struggling to meet $7 billion in redemptions. For years, he had simply deposited investors' money in his business account at JP Morgan Chase and withdrew money from that account when they requested redemptions. He was able to scrape together just enough money to make a redemption payment on November 19th. But despite cash infusions from several longtime investors, by the week after Thanksgiving, it was apparent that there was not enough money to meet the remaining requests. His Chase account had over $5.5 billion in mid-2008, but by late November was down to just $234 million, not even a fraction of the outstanding redemptions. With banks having all but stopped lending, Madoff knew he couldn't even begin to borrow the money he needed. On December 3rd, he told longtime assistant Frank DePascali, who had overseen the fraudulent advisory business, that he was finished. On December 9th, he revealed the fraud to his brother Peter. According to his sons, he told Mark on the following day that he had planned to pay out $173 million in bonuses 2 months early. Madoff said that he had recently made profits through business operations and that now was a good time to distribute it. Mark told his brother Andrew, and the next morning they went to their father's office and asked him how he could pay bonuses to his staff if he was having trouble paying his clients. They then traveled to his apartment, where, with his wife Ruth nearby, he told them he was finished, that he had absolutely nothing left, and that his investment fund was just one big lie and basically a giant Ponzi scheme. According to their attorney, Madoff's sons then reported their father to federal authorities. Madoff had intended to wind up his operations over the remainder of the week before having his sons turn him in. He directed DePascali to use the remaining money in his business account to cash out the accounts of several family members and favorite friends. But as soon as they left their father's apartment, the sons immediately contacted a lawyer, who in turn got them in touch with federal prosecutors and the SEC. On December 11th, 2008, Madoff was arrested and charged with securities fraud, to which he eventually pled guilty. He posted $10 million in bail and remained under 24-hour monitoring and house arrest in his Upper East Side penthouse apartment until March 12, 2009, when Judge Danny Chin revoked his bail and remanded him to the Metropolitan Correctional Center. Chin ruled that Madoff was a flight risk because of his age, his wealth, and the prospect of spending the rest of his life in prison. Prosecutors filed 2 asset forfeiture pleadings, which included lists of valuable real estate and personal property, as well as financial interests and entities owned or controlled by Madoff. On June 26, 2009, Chin ordered a forfeiture of $170 million in Madoff assets. Prosecutors asked Chin to sentence him to 150 years in prison. In a settlement with federal prosecutors, Ruth Madoff agreed to forfeit her claim to $85 million in assets, leaving her with $2.5 million in cash. David Sheenan, chief counsel to trustee Picard, stated that on September 27, 2009, about $36 billion was invested into the scam. About half of Madoff's investors were net winners, earning more than their investment. In a May 4, 2011 statement, Picard said that the total amount owed to customers with some adjustments was $57 billion, of which $17.3 billion was actually invested by customers. $7.6 billion has been recovered, but pending lawsuits, only $2.6 billion was available to repay victims. On March 12, 2009, Bernie Madoff pled guilty to 11 federal felonies, including securities fraud, wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, making false statements, perjury, theft from an employee benefit plan, and making false filings with the SEC. The plea was in response to a criminal complaint filed 2 days earlier, which stated that over the past 20 years, Madoff had defrauded his clients of almost $65 billion in the largest Ponzi scheme in history. Madoff insisted he was solely responsible for the fraud and did not plea bargain with the government. Rather, he pleaded guilty to all charges. It has been speculated that he pled guilty instead of cooperating with the authorities in order to avoid naming any associates and co-conspirators who were involved with him in the scheme. In November 2009, David Freeling, Madoff's accounting frontman and auditor, pled guilty to securities fraud, investment advisor fraud, making false filings to the SEC, and obstructing the Internal Revenue Service. He admitted to merely rubber stamping Madoff's filings rather than auditing them. Freeling extensively cooperated with federal prosecutors and testified at the trials of 5 former Madoff employees, all of whom were convicted and sentenced to between 2.5 and 10 years in prison. Although he could have been sentenced to more than 100 years in prison because of his cooperation, Freeling was sentenced in May 2015 to just 1 year of home detention and 1 year of supervised release. On June 29, 2009, Judge Chin sentenced Madoff to the maximum sentence of 150 years in federal prison. Madoff's lawyers had asked for a sentence of just 12 years. At his sentencing, Madoff apologized to his victims, saying, "I have left a legacy of shame, as some of my victims have pointed out, to my family and my grandchildren. This is something I will live in for the rest of my life. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't help you." Ruth Madoff did not attend court but issued a statement saying, "I am breaking my silence now because my reluctance to speak has been interpreted as indifference or lack of sympathy for the victims of my husband Bernie's crime, which was exactly the opposite of the truth. I'm embarrassed and ashamed. Like everyone else, I feel betrayed and confused. The man who committed this horrible fraud was not the man whom I have known for all these years." On April 14th, 2021, Madoff died of natural causes in a federal prison for inmates with special health needs near Butner, North Carolina. A death certificate listed the cause of death as hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and chronic kidney disease. According to the document, he was cremated in Durham, North Carolina. The largest fraudster in American history, Bernie Madoff, was 82 years old when he died alone in prison.